What's up, y'all? My name is JR, and for those of you who don't already know, I'm a huge movie and TV nerd. If you're new here, I appreciate you taking the time to check out my channel. I hope you'll consider sticking around and joining the film community I'm trying to build here on YouTube. So in today's video, I'm going to be giving my reaction and review of Jordan Peele's supernatural psychological sports horror film, Him. And just so you guys know, this video will contain mild spoilers, so if you haven't gotten around to going to the theater and seeing this movie yet, and you don't want to know anything that happens in it, you might want to exit this video now. And with that being said, no more wasting time. Let's get into it. Him is an American-made supernatural psychological sports horror film directed by Justin Tipping, co-written by Skip Bronke, Zach Akers, and Tipping as well, and produced by Jordan Peele's Monkey Paw Productions. The film stars Marlon Wayans, Tyreek Withers, Julia Fox, Tim Heidecker, and Jim Jeffries. And it follows the trials of a young up-and-coming football player training at the isolated compound of an aging and nearly retired quarterback. Now, Him is going to be released in the United States by Universal Pictures on September 19th of 2025. And at the time of the making of this video, the movie has a 30% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 88 critic reviews. That's a lot for a Rotten Tomatoes score so low. And its popcorn meter currently sits at 59% with over 100 verified ratings. The film has a Metascore on Metacritic of 39, based on 23 critic reviews, and it has a user score of just 2.0, but that's only based on 4 user ratings. And finally, the movie has a 5.6 out of 10 on IMDb with almost 700 ratings. So look, everything I saw of this film before its release told me that I was not going to like this movie. And I do mean everything. To the point that I went into the theater anxious, prepared to absolutely trash the film, and to have to deal with all the backlash from black folks that would come from that. And, the other thing is, I'm going to say this with as much respect as I possibly can. I think Jordan Peele peaked with Get Out, right? I think that Jordan Peele peaked with Get Out, and I think that the movies that he has made since then have all been kind of steps back. I think Us wasn't quite as good as Get Out, and I think Nope wasn't quite as good as Us. And so on and so on. So I looked at this film going, I don't know if I'm really into another Jordan Peele special. And when you consider the fact that Jordan Peele didn't write this, he didn't direct this, his production company is simply producing it, you kind of go, it might not even be as good as you would expect the next Jordan Peele film to be. So I was really, really anxious about that. But after watching the film and having several hours to sit and think about what I saw, I still contend that the film was so much better than I initially thought that it would be. Now, I thought the film was rather carefully crafted by the screenwriters in order to tell a football story without a ton of football, right? Which I respect because that's an extremely hard thing to do. And when you look at this movie's budget, you kind of have a better understanding of the lack of football footage because, stadiums and crowds and football extras and stuff like that, you start to really jack up the budget. And so, this story is a whole lot more contained. And I think that that's fine for the story that they were trying to tell because you didn't really need football games in order to tell this story. And so, again, this is where creativity has to kind of come in and kind of do its thing. I thought that, though the film will seem to be divided into 5 parts, it actually follows a 3-act structure fairly closely. In fact, if you really, really pay close attention, it even saves the cat. Shout out to Blake Snyder. Look, I do agree with the people who will say that the, superimposition of each day it was supposed to be a different thing that was supposed to be highlighted. And, separating the film like that into the 5 sections does confuse the issue a bit for people who don't really understand what they're looking at, on a deeper level, right? And so I can understand how people might have been confused by that, but I assure you the film falls into 3-act structure. The film even, like I said, the structure even falls into the Blake Snyder Save the Cat. And again, I won't get into too much here because I don't want to spoil a whole lot. This is a non-spoiler, reaction review, so I'll just leave it there for right now. You can check my main channel if you want to hear more in-depth analysis about the film. Now, I've seen some movie critics, on YouTube talk about how there wasn't enough character development for them to truly care about Cam, but I would argue that that's not exactly true. The character development just happens through dialogue instead of through action. And that's maybe where some people are missing the boat. And the character development doesn't happen in the setup. It happens later in the film, and there's a reason for that. But also, if you can put yourself in Cam's shoes, then you'll be just fine in that regard. I personally had no issue understanding the dilemma that Cam faced, especially once the filmmakers revealed the more intimate details about his childhood, his father, and most important, his very recent past. Again, no spoilers. And furthermore, the reason why some of the things that would develop the character during the setup seem missing is because, again, the writers purposefully omit them, having Cam reveal them later in the film through dialogue so as to not give away the twist during the third act. And look, sometimes this works, and sometimes it doesn't work, right? You're making a gamble here when you go, I'm going to save some of this for later because if I give too much now, then people will be able to kind of telegraph, where the film's going and what's going to happen, and then it won't be a surprise and that whole thing. So filmmakers and screenwriters do this all the time, where you kind of make an educated guess and just kind of go, you know what, I understand that by moving this piece to this section of the film instead of having it where it might typically be, that's going to, ruffle some feathers. But I think overall what we're going to get back from making that decision is worth the risk of doing it. And I'll go ahead and say, too, that even with them kind of omitting some of what would have initially been the setup, the catalyst still comes damn near right on time. So, again, like I said, that, the creative moving of the cups around the table, I didn't really have too much of an issue with. I thought the small writing was extremely poignant, and I thought it worked well hand in hand with the countless metaphors, especially goat metaphors, that populate the film if you care to pay close enough attention. And I've seen people say that this movie was all over the place, but again, I disagree. Some are saying that the dialogue was all over the place, but that's just the writers prioritizing how people actually talk to one another instead of placing their thumbs on the scale and forcing their characters to say things to each other that they wouldn't naturally say given the point in the story or the point in their relation to the other characters. And you guys know I'm team conversational dialogue all day, every day. I want characters that talk how people actually talk to one another. And I think you get that here in this film. And I also think that the dialogue constantly goes back to the main point of the film, which I also don't have a problem with, which is, what is the price you're willing to pay for greatness, right? And that's why it might seem like sometimes we get into the same conversation over and over and over again, because Isaiah, played by Marlon Wayans, is constantly asking Cam, played by Tyreek Withers, what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to give up? How much work are you willing to do to truly, truly, truly be great? I want to understand, how badly do you want this? And that's literally what the entirety of the film is about. And this movie is not just about the price for greatness, right? And whether or not it's worth it. It's a movie about the price for greatness and whether it's worth it to a particular person. That being Cam, given his current and past circumstances, and understanding the difference between those two questions is fundamental to getting how the metaphors and the dialogue both work in tandem to do the heavy lifting in this story, right? It's not, because some people do think that the sacrifices that you have to make to be a great football player are completely worth it. That's not the question. The question is it worth it for Cam, given, where he stands at this particular point in the story? Is it worth it for him? And, once you've digested all of the pertinent information about Cam, his past, his present, his wants and his wishes, the ending of the film will come as no surprise to you. But again, I don't think it really needs to, because the important thing here is that the writers land the plane. And they do so in rather simple fashion from a narrative standpoint, all while being quite grandiose aesthetically, if you ask me. Landing the plane is so much more important than surprising people. I think way too many screenwriters get it in their head that they have to shock and awe instead of just going where the story leads. And, I got to say that the filmmakers, they kept it simple here. Sometimes that's the best way forward. Just keep it simple, stupid. You know what I mean? And so again, I give kudos to the screenwriters here for understanding the story that they were telling, and then just go ahead and tell us the story. Like, you don't have to try to surprise us and do all this other kind of stuff like that to go over and above and beyond to kind of make the ending shocking. You know what I'm saying? Just tell us the story, and I think they did that fairly well. Now, overall, I'd give this film an 85% or an 8.5 out of 10 if you're thinking IMDb score. And I'm going to go with an A- due to the sheer complexity of the situation here, right? Writing a film like this is a lot harder than your typical football film where it's just about going on the field and rah-rah-rahing and, you know, like a Rudy or like a Remember the Titans or even like an Any Given Sunday, even like a Replacements or a film like that, those things are more about teamwork, you know, overcoming adversity. You know, if you're talking about Rudy, you know, but they're more like teamwork, you know, when the game stands tall, those kinds of films where you're really going to get into the football of it all, right? That isn't what this is. This is something completely different. And you need to understand that when you go into this, because I think there are some people who are going football movie and then you get there and go, oh, what the heck is this? So look, I know I'm going to get some pushback on this one. And I'm prepared for that because I want to remind you guys that my channel is largely academic, right? I watch these films a little bit differently than most of you all do, right? You watch a movie, you want to be entertained, right? See, I'm watching a movie, and yes, I am looking at entertainment value. I'm looking at the casting, I'm looking at the acting and the directing and that kind of thing, sure. But then I go a level deeper and I start asking myself, are the trains running on time here in this story, right? What is the structure of the story? Are the beats happening when they're supposed to? Does the screenwriter appear to know what the hell they're doing? Or did they just throw something against the wall and it just so happened to stick? What's going on here story-wise, right? Is really where I get into. I mean, my page is called A Mad Screenwriter. It ain't called A Mad Filmmaker. It's called A Mad Screenwriter. So I hone in specifically on the writing. And that's story to me. Story, right? And so I understand that even with the grade that I gave this film, that this will not be the kind of movie that's everyone's cup of tea, right? I look at it this way, right? If you're a person who only likes rap music, if I took you to a jazz concert, you might not like the music. You might not have fun. But that doesn't mean that the instrumentalist can't play. And that's what I want people to keep in mind here. And I'm already seeing people say that this movie will be the downfall of Jordan Peele, right? And I don't think that's the case at all, right? I think he's cemented his place in Hollywood now for the next 20 years. I think he's going to have a chance to be every bit as much of a mainstay as Spike Lee has been over the last, you know, over my lifetime especially. And, you know, this film may not do huge numbers at the box office, you know. In fact, I would be shocked if, I wouldn't be shocked if it doesn't cross the $100 million mark, which when you look at, you know, $27 million budget, which means once you add marketing and stuff like that, the film will probably need to cross $100 million at the box office to break even. I don't know if this film's going to make that, but the film will eventually cross over into the black once streaming and all that kind of stuff happens. And people kind of, you know, on demand and that kind of thing like that, it'll cross the $100 million mark at that point. But, yeah, box office, I wouldn't be shocked if it doesn't quite get to $100 million. 60 or 70, what I think this movie could make at the movies. And no, that's not going to be great news, but it's not going to spell the end of Jordan Peele's career by any stretch. This film, from a narrative perspective, works just fine to me, which proves to me that though Tipping isn't quite Jordan Peele, at the very least, he understood the assignment. But what do you guys think? Have you had a chance to go see him yet? If you have, what did you think about the way the film employed its many metaphors to make the point about the cost of athletic greatness? Do you think this is a film you could watch more than one time? Let me know in the comments. And for those of you that might be new to the channel, be sure to like and share this video. If you really like the content, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video. You can also now support the channel by leaving a super thanks. If you should be so inclined, I'd greatly appreciate it. Also, feel free to subscribe to my main channel and my new shorts channel for additional content. The links are in the description. In addition, be sure to go and check out themadscreenwriter.com for more television and film reviews and info on my upcoming film projects. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I got screenplays to write. And I'll catch y'all on the next video.